Our speaker tonight, Kurt Schwarz, is going to talk about birding on the Equator, the Chaco region. Kurt's a retired Department of Defense employee, joined the club in 1994 and has been doing serious birding for the last 31 years. He's a former president of the club and a conservation chair emeritus for many years of both MOS and Howard County Bird Club. He's seen 1,624 species worldwide. He just added 54 in Panama. 700 species in the U.S., 403 species in Maryland, and 288 in Howard County. Doing pretty good. Not yet. So I always have to throw in the personal thing. So when I first got in the club, I find this guy out there, and he's kind of like the Harrises and the Sam Ariel. He would put me on birds. I remember him putting me on a Lincoln sparrow. Yeah. He knows that, and a lot of other birds, but I remember that one especially. He's always out there. He helps. He leads a lot of walks. And the rest of this is on the Chaco region. Kurt visited that area in Ecuador in October 2023 on an MOS-sponsored trip. The trip visited private refuges and national parks on both sides of the equator. Habitats visited included rain and cloud forests, and the Paramo grasslands high up in the Andes, and it did not include the Galapagos. And it's all yours. Kurt, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Greg. And what he said about not getting grasslands back, that's not quite true. Reclaimed strip mines actually do make for nice grassland areas. The last Henslow sparrow I saw no more than 2 yards away was on a reclaimed strip mine. Okay.
You mean that?
Yeah.
We never think to do that. Usually we're halfway through. Okay, as Greg said, this was a fall of October of 2023 trip. It was sponsored by MOS, and there on your left is the whatever at the equator where it's 0 degrees latitude and all that sort of stuff, and they have like a big park sort of thing there. And on the right is Hummingbird Madness at one of the places that I went to. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We have 2 different species of hummingbird in that shot. Okay, 14 through 21st of October 2023, 257 species total. 193 were life birds for me, and I managed to get photos of 151. You will not see 151 slides here. The trip was run through Holbrook Travel. Doggone it. What was the guy's name? Edwin Perez was the leader. Kevin was the driver. They were both excellent. We had comfortable accommodations, etc. Okay, here is the map of Ecuador. I am not going to talk about the Galapagos. We flew into Quito, and then we went northeast and hit various refuges and so forth up here. Then we went south and covered areas in the Napo province. We were also in Pinchicha. And the first hotel we stayed in the Quito area was the Hotel Rincon de Pueblo. And pretty much the next morning, you're not in Kansas anymore. Here we have the fawn-breasted tanager. There were interesting birds just flitting around the hotel grounds. We started driving to our first refuge and stopped off on the road, and we came across this grass wren. This was once considered conspecific with the sedge wren that we have here in North America, but it has since been split. And I'm amazed that I got a picture of this damn thing. And we went to the Anacocha Reserve. This is up in the cloud forest area. And there we saw things like masked flower piercer, yellow-bellied brush finch, a hummingbird, the great sapphire wing. There were lots of hummingbirds there. Buff-winged star frontlet. You go to South America, you go to Central America, you've got a whole new birding vocabulary. Tyrian metal tail, which we actually saw at the same spot that we had the grass wren, but this one posed very nicely for me at Yanacocha.
Oh.
And scarlet-bellied mountain tanager, it's a fairly colorful bird. The rufous-collared sparrow is a wide-ranging sparrow that you will find throughout Central America down into South America. It is basically the, I don't know, below the Rio Grande equivalent of a white-throated sparrow. They look sort of like one, they certainly act like one, they sound like one. They are very common. And then there was this really cool orangey hummingbird called the Shining Sunbeam.
Oh,
And then the really exaggerated bill of the sword-billed hummingbird. This, unfortunately, was the best picture I could get, but you get a pretty good idea of it's got a bill that's pretty much as long as the body of the bird. So then we're driving around, and then we came across on a stream side this lovely little guy called a chestnut-bellied bush tyrant. And it was soon after that that I brought the van to a screeching halt when I screamed, "Dipper!" because I had spotted on the side of the road, and it was this white-capped dipper, not unlike our American dipper, except it has a lot more color. Well, it has white, whereas ours is just a brown thing. And the next stop was something called the Alambi Reserve. Again, this is to the northeast of Quito. And apparently they pride themselves on hummingbirds here. And here we have another hummingbird, the buff-tailed coronet. And then we have two purple-throated wood stars. That's the male there in front, and in the back view of the female. Pretty colorful bird. And then here's the female perching very nicely. And another bunch of birds, hummingbirds you will see south in Central and South America are the hermits. They all have curved bills. And this is the white whiskered hermit. You can see where it gets the name from that white striped mustachio or whatever you want to call it. And here we have the brown violet ear, yet another hummingbird. A female Andean emerald. Would be nice to get a male, but that didn't happen, sorry. And a buff-throated saltator. This is a fairly widespread species in Latin America. Green olive woodpecker, a little bit more colorful than our woodpeckers. And the red-headed barbet. Again, this is all at Alamo. The tanagers are pretty colorful down there. This being the golden tanager. And yet another hummingbird, the fawn-breasted brilliant, although it's not a particularly brilliant bird, I don't think. Okay, another refuge we went to was called the Sendero Frutitor. Again, this is somewhere northeast of Quito. And there we saw the orange-billed sparrow. He kind of blends in, but right here, and there's the orange bill. Dusky-faced tanager. This bird ranges up into Panama. We saw several of these in Panama back at the beginning of April. And here we are driving around again, and we have two flavor of toucan here. Let's see if I can remember correctly. This is the Chaco here with the brown lower mandible, and then the yellow-throated with the black mandible, unless I have it backwards. And then we wound up at the Sachatamia Lodge, which was a very comfortable place to stay. This is where we stayed, ate our meals for several nights. And just on the grounds, you could see things like the green-crowned brilliant, violet-tailed sylph. These were we saw like every day. Here we have a rusty margin flycatcher. There's a whole row of flycatchers like the social flycatcher that all look alike, rusty margin, gray-headed, et cetera, et cetera. They're all fairly wide ranging. This does get up into Panama. And then here we have, go figure, a Central American agouti. That is the official name of this creature. I don't know why, because we are well down in South America when I saw it. But in any case, it's a big tailless rat. The Refugio Paz de las Aves is operated by a guy by the name of Angel Paz. This is the guy that pioneered the technique of luring secretive antpittas out into the open with earthworms. He now, on his refuge, has 5 different species that he has trained. He arrives at the place, he whistles, he calls their name, and they come hopping out. But one of the first birds we saw was the lyre-tailed nightjar. It's this brown thing right here. This was way up on a hillside. In theory, I could have walked up there for a closer look. It probably wouldn't have spooked it, but it was wet, it was slippery, and my wife would have killed me if she found out. She's probably watching on Zoom as we speak. But long story short, no, I behaved myself, dear, and I stayed on the road.
Oh.
And then we got to go to a lake where the Indian cock of the rock was displaying. And they make all sorts of weird, funny noises. And this is the male, bright orange. There really is no bill to be seen, and just a really colorful bird. Back at the lodge, we could sit out and see birds at the feeders and so forth. Here we have the golden-naped tanager. It does have a little gold skull cap here. And here we have the black-capped tanager, also blue, but with a black cap. One of the neatest hummingbirds was the white-booted racket-tail. There are in Ecuador 2 species of racket-tail that have the long, exaggerated tail like that. The key to telling them apart is what color are the fuzzy parts here? Are they white like this one, or are they red like the one that's known as the Peruvian that we'll see a little later? If you remember that long blue-tailed hummingbird, this is the female, violet-tailed silk. Driving around, we encountered a young hook-billed kite, and wasn't sure exactly where I took this, but here we have an orange-breasted fruit eater, but we are to the northeast of Quito. And then this place was truly knock it out of the park in terms of really, really interesting birds and lots of them. Mashpi amagosa. Golden-bellied flycatcher. Little cuckoo. If you're familiar with squirrel cuckoo, this is like half the size, half the length, et cetera, hence the name. Zeladon's antbird. Antbirds tend to be skulking birds. They don't generally come out in the open. You're lucky to get a photo. And then the Chivi vireo, which is a split, I understand, from the red-eyed vireo that we are familiar with. It does sound different, and it's much more, I don't know, heavily marked or whatever than our red-eye. This is a tiny little flycatcher called the mouse gray flycatcher. If you've been in, say, Panama or whatever, there's the brand colored flycatcher that for a long time I had this photo labeled as that, and then when I went to Panama and I see it listing brand colored flycatcher, and I said, wait a minute, I had that in Ecuador. I was confused. It was the mouse gray. Cinnamon Bacard. This is fairly wide ranging. I've seen this in Panama as well, but it's a cute little bird. And then the peewees are much darker than ours. They're all black. This is the smoke-colored peewee. A not real good look at a black-billed pepper shrike. These are fairly large and noisy birds, but they tend to be very hard to see, let alone photograph. And then here we hit the jackpot with tanagers. There's the golden one that we saw earlier. This one is glistening green. We'll have better looks at that. This one are called flame-headed tanagers, I think. And then we have the boy and girl of the flame-rumped tanager.
Wow.
But like I said, there's a bunch. This is the rufous-throated tanager. This arguably is one of the best pictures I think I've ever taken. I really like this one. Here we have that bright green one again, glistening green. And then a golden collared honey creeper. Now, if you see that orange thing in the hand there, right, that is a big flower bract. And what they did there was they would take that and dip it in a bucket of sugar water and plop it in your hand. And you hold your hand out and boom, you've got a hummingbird on every finger.
Wow.
If you remember that first shot that I had one on every finger. This is the Empress Brilliant female. Female purple-bibbed white tip. I'd really like to see the male of that one. Velvet purple coronet. This was probably the most abundant hummingbird there. Brown Inca. And if you remember, I was talking on the group shot. This is the flame-faced tanager. It's a pretty bright, colorful one. Moss-backed tanager. And then another lodge we visited to the northeast of Quito was the Balcon Tupiki, where we had the toucan barbet. And these places all have feeding stations. That's largely what's bringing the birds in. The blue-winged mountain tanager. The black-chinned mountain tanager. They're both black, yellow, and white. How the heck do you tell the difference? Well, there are subtle differences, or actually not that subtle differences. This is the blue-capped tanager. And then a black-winged saltator. This is not quite, I think, as widely distributed as the buff-throated. And one of the big draws to that particular place is the plate-billed mountain toucan. Rather differently colored from any of the other toucans you've seen. It does seem to have a rather smaller bill too. But going back to the Refugio Paz de las Aves, Ango Paz's places, this is one of, we saw 3 of the 5 ant pittas there. This was the first one we saw, the mustached ant pitta. Again, he calls, whistles, starts throwing hummingbirds, they come out in the open. And while we were there, we also saw the rufous-breasted ant thrush, a glossy-backed thrush. This is basically a robin. It's a genus Turdus, whatever, and it looks and smells and tastes like an American robin, whatever. The second was the chestnut-crowned ant pitta. That again, we went to a different spot. And he whistled and called, and out it came. And rather colorful bird. Look at the legs on that thing. So driving around, at one point, we pulled over to the side of the road. There was a puddle, and there was some kind of grill going on there and all that sort of thing because there was this masked water tyrant there. Back at Sachitamia, before breakfast, getting up, there was a light on, and there was this big, this strong-billed wood creeper Wood creepers are a large family of whatever in Latin America, and they come in different varieties. There's wood creepers, there's leaf tossers, there's foliage gleaners, et cetera, et cetera. They're all basically brown, and they cling to tree trunks, like this plain brown wood creeper. There is an area at Sachatamia Lodge where they have a sheet set up and they shine a light on it all night, excuse me. And it brings in a phenomenal number of interesting moths. And part of me has to stop, like, wait a minute, who cares about the birds? Let's go look at these moths. But it also brings in the birds. And here we have the plain brown wood creeper. This is a fairly widespread in Latin America. The three-striped warbler, lineated foliage gleaner, again, wood creeper, foliage gleaner. The masked trogon came in and gave us a really nice show. And then this is a little flycatcher, a bright little flycatcher called the ornate flycatcher. And then here we have a rufous motmot. Motmots have that long tail and then the sort of a stalk with a little tuft on the end of it, which I didn't capture in this photo. This bird does occur all the way up to Panama. And a street-capped tree hunter, another one of those wood creeper type things. Okay, now we go south of Quito, across the equator, excuse me, probably across the equator before we got to Quito. I think that's south of the equator. And this is like a monument that they've put there, and latitude 0, etc. And here I am straddling the equator. I have a foot in each hemisphere. Also wearing my kabuki makeup. On the grounds of the Museo Solar de Sitio Itenan, where there was a nest of eared doves. We were treated to a golden grosbeak coming to a feeder. And there were vermilion flycatchers flying around. And these, of course, range all the way up to Texas. Once upon a time, they thought the equator was at this point and built a big monument there, only to discover that they'd miscalculated and put it the other one. But there's still the so-called middle of the world monument here, Mitad del Mundo, where we didn't see much of anything other than a tropical mockingbird. And as we continued south, we went up into the Andes, into the mountains, and went to a place called the Tambo Condor, where we enjoyed the black-tailed train bearer, which, of course, as you can see, has an extremely long tail. And the feeders there were also attracting this cute little fellow, the cinereus conebill. And unlike the masked flower piercer that we had at the other location, here we have the black flower piercer, and they do pierce flowers to try and suck the nectar out and bypass, any pollinator services that the flower is trying to exact. Okay, the National Park Antisana. Antisana is a big, huge, extinct volcano, and we went up into that. Where we got to see the Andean condor soaring. We were actually able to see the condors from the Tambo condor, but they were far away on a cliff, like through a scope and everything else. Here it was marginally closer. And then the Ecuadorian hill store was a hummingbird that we had. Now we are actually up in the Andes into the grassland areas called the Paramo. And the Ecuadorian hill star apparently is a obligate species there or something. I don't know, but yeah, high elevation thing. Okay. Okay, and then we also saw things like chestnut-winged synclodes. Synclodes are birds that we don't have here, of course. And here is the stout-billed synclodes. and a many-striped conistero. This was a black-chested buzzard eagle photographed through the van glass, so it's not the best photo in the world. So. And here we have the volcano. Wow. It apparently generates its own weather. The clouds are swirling around it and all that sort of thing, but you can see the grasslands all around. And here we are, Shashi, Kim Gross, and myself. If you look closely, that is a Howard County Bird Club magnet. There is also a decal here. So I did my best to spread Howard County Bird Club's whatever in Ecuador, as well as when I was last in Costa Rica, and I'm getting set to set a shipment down to Panama. But again, you can see the grasslands on either side of the bus, and that's, oops, that is our driver, Kevin, giving a thumbs up. So. There was a lake up there, and it had a silvery grebe on it, and slate-colored coot that looks an awful lot like our coot, and the yellow-billed pintail, which posed for a fairly nice picture, I think. Indian lapwing, shorebird, although that's hardly the shore up there. And the carunculated caracara. These things are flying all over the darn place up there. Back to the Tombo condor, and here we have the giant hummingbird. This is one really big hummingbird. It's 2-3 times the size of the ones you're used to seeing here. It's a big bird, a big hummer. Sparkling violet ear. And then we drove up another mountain. You can see there's a good deal of relief here. And our target was these guys. Rufous-bellied seed snipe. And there was one fellow in the van who was very, 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 very soft-spoken. And he would never, ever, ever, ever speak up. And we're driving up the mountain, we haven't gotten to the top, and he doesn't say anything, and he sees these damn things. And we spent an hour wandering around up on top of the mountain looking for them, only to find them as we came down. Why he didn't say something sooner, I could have strangled him. But okay, so driving around, we crossed a river and saw a torrent duck. It was pretty distant, not a really good photo, but okay. The Geopark Napo, we never actually went in. We were at a roadside stop that was just outside the entrance to it. And that particular stop with its bus shelter and everything else was just dripping in birds, like these turquoise jays, or this grass green tanager, black-crested warbler. This guy was down on the grass and hopping around, and fortunately I was able to get a picture. Pearled tree runner, not a real satisfying photo, but black and green fruit eater, and another bad photo of a smoky bush tyrant. And another one of these reserves that we visited, again with a feeder type operation, is the Waira Reserve, where we had the white-throated quail dove, red-crested finch, green hermit, unlike the, the white-whiskered hermit we had earlier, and a flock of these rufous-breasted wood quails came wandering in to munch away. You had to be very, very quiet, not make any sudden moves, or else, boom, they'd, take off, but everybody was well behaved. A rather distant look at a blue-necked tanager. This was at Waira. And then we went to the San Isidro Lodge, which was an absolutely wonderful place to stay. And you had long walks, from your cabins to the main dining hall and stuff like that, and there would be birds flitting around and so forth. Among the birds we saw there was the Andean potu. If you look very closely, that is a chick. So we got to see one sitting on a nest of sorts.
Just one chick?
One is all we saw. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but I suspect it's just one though. Pardon me. Again, we're at San Isidro. This is at the dining hall, the communal area, and these chestnut-bellied cornets were all over the darn place. Did I manage to get a decent photo? Well, not really, but wonderful bird with bright reddish whatever here and glistening green. I think you can see how it gets its name, the speckled hummingbird. And here's a bronzy Inca, yet another hummer. And wintering Canada warblers, which are just starting to arrive around here. Probably at least two singing over at MPA this morning. But neotropic migrants. Remember the Central American agouti that was brown. Here we have the black agouti. Again, this is a big tailless rodent. Smaller than a capybara, but I don't know if they're actually bigger than beavers. I'd have to look that up. Back to the wood creepers. This is the Montane wood creeper here. This was taken just from the deck of the lodge. And then this is an undescribed as yet to science owl. It is technically now considered a black-banded owl, but they believe that there's enough of it that is different that it will merit its own species and probably become the San Isidro owl. It's a night shot, so of course it's a little iffy. The green jays look a little different in Ecuador than the ones you see in South Texas. And then here we have an inquisitive tail-edged flycatcher. These are all birds that I'm seeing from the deck of the lodge, from the communal hall. And then cute little cinnamon flycatcher. I actually had that on the trail a couple of times. I probably have a dozen frames of this bird different times, but this I think was the best shot. And then the collared Inca, this one black one with the white collar here. And here we have a greenback hill star. Okay, La Brisa hummingbird feeders was yet another one of those refuges that we stopped at. And here we have the violet-fronted brilliant. It's a young male. Green-backed brilliant. You remember the racket-tail earlier that had the white booties? This one has red. It is a Peruvian racket-tail. And then here's the tawny-bellied hermit. Again, the hermits have the curved bills. It perhaps is reminiscent of a really rufous long-tailed hermit. Here we have the female gorgeted wood star, which looks an awful lot like the female purple-bellied, whatever. Okay, we're getting real close to the end here. So Guango Lodge was about the last refuge that we stopped at. We had another, here we have the long-tailed sylph, again having a long bluish tail. I spent so much time trying to get a picture of this, the tourmaline sun angel, that the other folks back at the feeder area had another sword build, but well, whatever. I got the picture. And then we went back to Quito and we met some renowned birder there, et cetera, et cetera. He entertained us for a while where I got a picture of this great thrush in his backyard. And that's it. We'll be out of here well before 9 o'clock. Yeah, any questions? Okay.
How high up in the Andes did you guys go?
I don't have an answer to that, but we were pretty far up.
Jay's asking, did you see any parents?
I think we did. The question is, I guess, from what, Jay Shepard?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we did. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry?
Repeat the question further.
The question from Jay Shepard was, did we see any parrots? Yeah, I think so, but I don't remember off the top of my head, and obviously my pictures weren't good enough to put into this. Maureen?
And Ysidro Lodge, is that Mitch Weisinger's place?
I have no idea.
There's that other place which is his wife's family's lodge, the blonde folk.
It could very well be, but I don't know the answer to that. Robin?
How high? What was the maximum elevation?
Yeah, that question was asked before. I don't know exactly.
My follow-up
I don't-
is, did you notice any?
I don't recall any particular problem.
Okay.
When we did go up into the promo and all that sort of stuff, we were just there for, a few hours, et cetera, and I don't remember any particular difficulty. We rarely were doing any long walks, let alone strenuous, whatever, it was bounce on and off the bus. And
Totally different. The silhouette of the one with a sword.
the sword-billed
Was
hummingbird.
that its tongue sticking out?
No, that was the bill.
That
was the bill.
Wow. What an incredible bill.
Yeah, it's crazy, yes.
And what do the sword bills feed on? Why do they have that long bill?
I'm sure it's an adaptation to something, but I haven't gone that length and looked it the heck up. Now, if you ask me, what the white-tipped sicklebill is adapted for that has that I know. But
Something that's very obvious, Kurt, is the sword-billed hummingbird does not perch on feeders.
yeah, good point. Yeah, I don't think it's one that's gonna be showing up at feeders real often.
They eat from the feeders, but they have to.
Yeah. Yes.
Like this camera. I mean, how much of a lens do I need?
There are people that carry bazookas.
Yeah.
I use a Nikon Coolpix P900 bridge camera.
Okay.
It has a long reach. When push comes to shove, a person with a long lens and an SLR, and if you're comparing apples to apples and conditions are the same and all that sort of thing, the good equipment is going to show better than. I'm not complaining. No. Yeah. No. The P900 is the size of an SLR body. The P900 is no longer in production.
1200 now.
Well,
Coolpix 1200.
yeah, but no, that's a whole different camera. That is the size of a house. I'm exaggerating, but it's a much bigger camera. It does have a longer reach, and there is an 1100 now that apparently has a manual focus ring as well. I want.
So the 1100?
Yeah. $1,200 at B&H last time I looked.
Okay.
Thank you, Kurt. Something else you know about Kurt is there's an honorarium for this stuff. He just gave it back to the club. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, so sorry to say, but there's a hiatus on this stuff. You have to wait until September for more fun stuff. But there are field trips coming up. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Kevin Onland. He's been in the meetings with and amongst us. He and one of his students are going to talk to us about the endemic Puerto Rican Oriole. We've done some work for him on orchard orioles on the Schwarz farm in the past. So promises to be a very interesting talk. thanks for coming out. There may be a little bit of food left. There's stuff still left on the giveaway. Get a bag of hair for your birds, and thanks for coming out. Have a great night.